Good evening. So first, before I go through the slides of the different specialty or special needs that I feel like that I learned about this semester, hopefully I caught all of them. I'm going to tell you differentiated learning or instruction is a framework or philosophy for effective teaching that involves providing all students within a diverse classroom or a community of learners of a wide range of different avenues of understanding new information, like inquiring content, processing, constructing, or making sense of new ideas. Teachers need to make sure that they develop materials and assessments for every different kind of learner. One of the things that I have learned is in order for a teacher to have effective instruction for a wide range of learners and understanding effectiveness instruction and assessment is highly, highly recommended. Finding effective learning methods to address all diverse learners' needs can be challenging. In the universal design for learning, there are 3 principles, and they are equally important, and they all need to work together. The first principle is to provide multiple learners, is to provide multiple means of representation to include perception, language expression, symbols, and comprehension, or maybe to simplify, it would be the what of learning. Teachers need to think of what they are presenting and how they are presenting it. Students do not all learn the same. Educators should not expect every student to learn the same. The second principle is to provide multiple means of learning in which students are actually learning what they are giving. This can be done through physical action, expression, and communication, and executive function. Physical action would be physically grading, looking, seeing their papers. Expression and communication will be talking to the student, making sure that what you taught them they understand because they can tell you. An executive function, I believe, to me would be maybe having them demonstrate something for you. Principle number 3 is to provide multiple means of encouragement through recruiting interest and sustaining effort and persistence and self-regulation. Students need to be engaged. They need to be motivated. They want to learn. They need to want to learn, because a student is not just going to learn because we expect them to learn. They are going to want to understand, know, and just be able to learn. So one of the first, my first slide is on autism. Characteristics of autism are marked by difficulties in behavior, social interaction, communication, and sensory activities. Some of these characteristics are common for people or students in the spectrum of autism, and others are just typical of the disability but not necessarily exhibited. They have problems with daily activities, staying interested. Some do self-injury, some have behavior, some have head rolling. You know, I have a friend who has an autistic son, and bless his heart, he's an amazing young gentleman. He's in high school now. I've known him since he was a baby, but you know, he's on a lower spectrum of autism, but he still has the disability. So he repeats himself a lot. He's very friendly, very sweet, very outgoing. He does have some, you know, issues with, what do I want to say, retaining the information that is being taught to him. So you have lots of repetition with him. One of the next things we learned about is deafness. And students with deafness have a hearing disability. This affects language, speech development, and lack it's all diminished due to the lack of the auditory response to sound. So one of the things that can help with teaching students like this, make sure they can read your lips, they can see your lips, no background noises, make sure that they sit close enough that they can hear you. Sometimes you have to have a special machine and they wear something so that they can actually hear you clearly. Sign language works if you know sign language. So there are very many different ways that you can communicate with students who do actually have hearing impairments or deafness. So speech and language impairment, this is a communication disorder that adversely affects the child's ability to talk, understand, read, and write. Approximately 20% of students have a speech and language impairment and receive special education for this. This number surprised me. I actually thought it was kind of high. I didn't realize so many people had speech. So speech can do different things. One of them that we learned about was students who stutter, cluttering words. Sometimes there's omission like bow for boat, substitution like wabbit for rabbit. Language, there are 5 basic areas. So there's phonological, which is a speech production or perception. Morphological, which is affectionate nouns and verbs. Semantic disorders, inappropriate use of words. Synatic deficits, acquiring rules for that govern the words, and pragmatic difficulties, understanding and using in different social contexts. Most schools have a speech therapist that can help with these things, but also if you are clear and concise, you can adapt, and also you're going to have to adapt the curriculum for these particular students. So specific learning disabilities. Reading, for example, dyslexia. I grew up with dyslexia. It can be challenging when you turn words around so things don't make sense and you think you're saying something that makes sense, but it doesn't make sense. Writing is dysgraphia, is a disorder. Listening, speaking, reasoning, and then there's math, dyscalculia, and I think maybe I probably had that too. I was never diagnosed though, just feel like I had that because maybe it was my dyslexia. I did turn numbers around, but I'm not a great math student. So emotional disturbance, the characteristics, some of it can be hyperactivity, so a shortness of extension span, impulsiveness, aggression, so you have some self-injury, maybe acting out, fighting with other students. Sometimes there's withdrawal. They won't interact socially. They have severe anxiety and fear. And then there's immaturity, so it's just inappropriate activity, temper tantrums, poor coping skills when you have emotional disturbances. So then you have intellectual disabilities. Boy, I'm having trouble talking tonight. Students with certain limitations in mental functioning and in skills such as communicating or taking care of oneself. They learn and develop slower than a typical child. So sometimes they are behind maybe in reading, writing, different areas. So ADHD. This is a disorder in the neurodevelopment. Its characteristics, problems in paying attention, excessive activity, difficulty controlling their behavior. Symptoms usually appear before the age of 12. Now, not all students that have ADHD need special education services. Some of the different things that I was reading on top of class about ADHD, one of the videos in which I wish I had wrote down the name of it just so I could recall the exact video that you shared with us, about the way an ADHD person's brain functions was quite intriguing to me. I found it very interesting, the way the activity of the brain is for an ADHD child. One thing I think that needs to be looked at, though, that I learned is that sometimes I think there are too many children diagnosed with ADHD now, and a lot of medication is going to students that probably don't need it. Now, when you look at multiple disabilities, this can refer to a combination stimulus impairment, such as an intellectual disability and then blindness, or an intellectual disability and orthopedic. These students who have the multiple disabilities have to have more special instructed learning. Some cannot actually be in a regular classroom setting. They have to be in a special ed classroom, and hopefully your school is fortunate enough to have a special ed wing. So then we have TBI, traumatic brain injury, and this is when an external force causes problems internally inside the brain. It could be physical, cognitive, social, emotional, or behavioral symptoms. Sometimes people completely heal from TBIs. So I think this can cause, TBIs can cause some behavioral issues. Anyway, so moving on. Visual impairment. Most students have problems with reading and writing, and they must have glasses. This was actually kind of hard. My daughter was in kindergarten and passed the seeing test, no problems. Got in first grade, and the school district got a new machine that actually took pictures of the children's eyes. We found out that not only did my daughter need glasses, but she was way behind in reading and stuff, and I didn't worry too much about it at the time, but it turned out that she was nearsighted in one eye and farsighted in the other eye, so everything was like this, so nothing balanced for her. That's why she couldn't read. Once we got glasses, improved it, she sat closer to the teacher, she could read the board. Things seemed to improve for her. So there are different things that the school and educators can do to actually help move along with that. My daughter was actually born like that. We just never knew because she could actually see, just not the way we see. So then my last slide, gifted and talented students. They need to have adaptations and modifications to the classroom and curriculum for them, just like you would a special needs student, because one thing about gifted and talented students is that they actually they can get bored very easy. So they may be straight A students, but not be engaged and not be interested in the curriculum. So they just don't pay attention. They just don't do what they're supposed to do because they're bored. It doesn't stimulate their mind, and that's one of the principles that you need to make sure that the students' minds are being intrigued. I want to say thank you again for this class. You have been an excellent teacher. I plan on using the book more and learning more. May retake the class for a full semester just to take it, because I think there's so much more to learn. And I hope you have a great Christmas break. Thank you for everything.